Thank you, Dr. McLean. Spirit abiding, hopeful heart. These are very, very practical things, even though it seems like maybe it's just spiritual and something separate from the world. But really, if you think about it, when you're an abiding spirit, you're really getting a clear mind. You're taking the time to think and to be quiet and to kind of listen and pay attention. When you develop a heart that's positive and hopeful, that comes from abiding in the spirit. But that also helps to really calm your spirit as well, so that you have a clear mind and a calm heart. Then you're ready to make some decisions. Now, too often we are impulsive in our decision making. We just kind of see something, make a decision, and then try to fix it and adjust it if it's not the right decision, or maybe even get rid of it and start again. But there's some very, very clear steps to really good decision making. The first thing is to really recognize and identify what's the real issue, what's the real problem when you're needing to make a decision. One time when I was working at another job and I had to fly to Chicago for a business trip, my son, who we'd only recently adopted, he was about 9 years old and he'd been in foster care and in group homes and different places like that. And so his behavior just got really crazy in terms of his tearing things off the walls and being angry and blowing up and screaming and all these different kinds of behavior. Now, it'd been easy for us to think, okay, well, what's the real problem? His behavior and what he's doing, and we need to punish him, or we need to put him into timeout, or to restrict him, or do something like that. Well, at some point in the process, I recognized, maybe this is something different. And so I asked him, I said, are you afraid for me to be leaving and going to Chicago? And his eyes got big and he responded, yes, I'm afraid you're going to die. Because he'd seen a lot of movies and known things about Chicago being a big town. And so he was afraid that after all this time that he'd been waiting for a father, that as soon as he gets here, his father's going to leave and get killed. And so to really deal with the problem, I had to recognize what's the real issue behind the behavior. And as we solved that and processed it, I said, it's okay, I'll be fine. I'm just going to go up there, I'm going to meet and come back. It was an hour flight from where we lived at that time. And he calmed down and everything kind of smoothed out. But if I had been thinking it was a different problem and had really misunderstood what the real issue is, then I would have made the wrong decision. Well, that applies to any decision we make, whether we're buying a car or a house, or maybe deciding who we're going to date or marry. It's something that requires a little bit of thinking, what's the real issue here? What am I looking for? Do I need a car or a van or an SUV or a truck, or what's gonna fit? Do I need something that I can drive for 200,000 miles, or just something to get around town in? That's going to really help us in our decision making, is to figure out what's the real issue or the problem that I'm trying to solve in the first place. Secondly, then we start gathering information. We start researching. If it is a car, then we start looking online and we start finding and deciding, how much money do I have? How much money can I borrow? What if I can trade in another car? And you start kind of figuring out these different parts of researching and gathering information before you making a decision. A lot of you with the pandemic have had to make some decisions about your children's education. Do you keep them home? Do you send them to school? Do they do sort of a hybrid, at home and online? Do you homeschool? And you had to kind of figure out, the problem is what? Are they going to be safe? What's the best way they can continue their education? And then you start researching a little bit. Do we have a strong enough internet? Do I have time? Can we afford? And you start figuring out in your situation what's the best decision that can apply to the challenge that you're facing with it. Then you develop several different ideas that you've sort of come up with. And it's not only like brainstorming, but it's still being kind of creative and recognizing that most of the time in life, there's not only two choices. Normally there's three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 different options that you could do in your situation, the decision that you're making. For example, my wife and I bought an electric bicycle last year, and we went through these steps and we researched and we kind of checked. We looked at our situation. Well, my work was only, maybe a mile and a half from here, and I had to pay for parking and another car and a license and a tag. And so we decided, wow, we'll get this electric bicycle, and it just worked out great so that we could just keep one car and then have this other way for me to go back and forth to work. So as you develop these issues and just kind of being creative on the list, then you compare and decide, think about the pros and the cons. What I say is sometimes you just try on this hat and then you try on this hat and you try on this hat and you think, what would that work? What would be the new challenges that it would happen if we make that decision? What do I do if it's raining when I need to ride my bike to work? What do I do if it's cold or hot? And what if how do I make sure it's not stolen? So you start comparing these things, and then you pick the best option that you think is going to work. And this is part of what makes a decision intentional, is that you're researching, you're developing, you're evaluating, you're talking, and you're getting feedback from other people. Did this work for you? How many miles can an electric bicycle go, or whatever the decision that you're making? And then this is the fifth step, and this is what people normally do. The first step is they just make a decision, but all the way down here in the fifth step, you make a decision. You say, this is what we're going to do. And if you think that, well, I'm not going to decide, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, that's making a decision. It's deciding not to decide. And so things will just stay and really get worse, your situation. And so you have to come to that point where you know there's risk, but you've figured out that this is the best risk. And really the riskiest thing that you could ever do is to be so afraid to take some risk. You have to take some risk. And then the next part, and we start talking about in lesson 4, about the solutions being effective, being something that will work in your situation. And if it doesn't work out, that's all right, because you made a decision that was intentional. That means that you understand why you made that decision and what the next best decision is for you to make.